think we have everyone, so let's go ahead and call this special board meeting to order. It is August 4th at 5:01 p.m. For those listening to the audio recording, my name is Sean Eystone. I'd like to welcome you all here tonight. I'd like to start by introducing some of the folks on this meeting. We have board directors J.P. Clausen, Charlie Eastham, Janet Godwin, Ruthina Malone, and Lisa Williams, Superintendent Matt Degner, Recording Secretary Kim Colvin, as well as a whole host of district directors and administration. I want to mention a couple things before we get started. This is a special board meeting, so there's not a community comment period at the start, and to try and be consistent with any in-person public board meetings, we will not be answering any in real time any of the questions that come in via the Q&A or the chat options on the Zoom call. But board members and the admin team do see these, and we're making notes of things that we need to try and address in the future. During tonight's meeting, we do have a public hearing on the proposed school calendar change. During that, there is an opportunity for attendees to ask questions, but they do need to be limited to the specific calendar hearing topic. With that, I'd like to read a statement. The Iowa City Community School District and the superintendent do not agree with the guidance stated in the governor's press conference on July 30 and released by the Iowa Department of Health and Department of Education regarding the transmission rate levels that would allow a district to transition to 100% online learning. The guidance states that a county's positivity rate over 14 days must be more than 15% and absenteeism at 10% or higher before a district can request permission to completely shift to online learning. And that permission is only granted in 2-week increments. We believe in local control, and this circumstance is no different. We further believe decisions regarding the health and safety of our students, staff, and the general community are best made by those most closely associated with the decision-making, and repeated sources of expertise indicate that a more reasonable percentage to consider closure is most frequently cited at 5% and generally ranges from 3% to 10%. Johnson County's 14-day average as of August 2nd is 7.13%. These numbers are an indication of where we expect the matrix numbers to land as it relates to the decision for a temporary move to online. Iowa Code Section 274.1 provides that public school districts in Iowa shall have the exclusive jurisdiction in all school matters within their individual school district territory. And Iowa Code Section 279.8 authorizes local school boards to establish rules for the governance of their own respective school districts. And Iowa Code Section 274.3 provides that local school districts' statutory grant of power should be broadly construed. As our colleagues in Waukee aptly stated, districts are allowed to call an inclement weather day if the weather conditions present an increased risk in getting students and staff to buildings safely. We agree that it would seem that the same logic would follow for local decisions relating to the pandemic. Today, we have submitted an application for the consideration of a waiver to start in a remote continuous learning environment. We are hopeful that the Iowa Department of Public Health, the Iowa Department of Public Education, and the governor will grant our request to do what we feel is in the best interest of our students based on the best information that we have locally. And with that, we can enter into our agenda. And first up is our public hearing on the district calendar. And I will pass this off to Ruthina.
Now is the time and place for the public hearing on the Iccsd 2020-2021 revised district calendar. The revised calendar provides for schools to begin on September 8th, 2020 for the 2020-21 school year. The notice was published in the Iowa City Press Citizen on August 1st, 2020. Are there any questions from the board? Are there any questions from the public? If so, please raise your hand and Kim will allow you to speak.
We have
one with Jess Anderson.
What will that do to the end of the school year?
You guys okay with me taking that one?
Yeah, go ahead, Matt.
Okay. So Jess, if and for all those listening, if you look at the action item on the district calendar, you see a updated calendar provided there. And so those days would be tacked on at the end of the school year and completed in June. And so we'd essentially trade those August days that we would back up the start of the year till the 8th and trade those days and for instructional days in June.
Thank you.
Any additional questions? Krista Johnson.
Yeah, hi. Can you guys explain again the rationale for starting that later date? And I'm sorry if I missed that at the beginning of the meeting, just so we understand why that's on the table.
Sure. So the movement for reconsidering the start of the school year was when we received the additional guidance from the state on the 17th of July that let us know we would have to ask for permission to start in a continuous remote learning environment after we had made that decision on, I believe, the 14th or 15th of July. And so as of today was the first day we could actually ask for that permission. And so that's caused some of our planning work to slow down in that regard while we wait on that. And so to do some necessary components for staffing and being able to serve our students effectively, we felt that time was needed. I would say the most important rationale for that, though, was the letter we have attached to some of the presentation items in the past and that we'll have attached again tonight, looking at the influx of a large amount of students into our community here with the University of Iowa here in about a week or so in August with universities starting classes, and knowing that that'll likely affect the community spread rates in the community. And so trying to have some additional time to monitor those rates and see what that health data presents at over the last week. Some of those numbers have trended up a little since as we've monitored those with Johnson County Public Health. And so we wanted to try to get a better sense of where the health conditions in the community were at that time. It felt like those extra 2 weeks would provide some of that.
Neighborhood Centers of Johnson County.
I'm sorry, I'm not, this is Andrew Coghill-Barons. I'm not representing neighborhood centers, so please don't let this reflect on my agency. I'm asking, this would be about a 2-week postponement of the start of classes, which would put the end date of classes into mid-June. And as I understand it, our contractual obligation with employees extends to the end of June. Is there the possibility that there would be a further extension or delay in the start of school?
That's not something we had considered at this time, Andrew. So we had really looked at that 2-week time period for those couple reasons I just stated. So we hadn't looked at further delay than that.
Male.
Hi, my name is Miriam Lind. I am asking, have we considered reshuffling like Des Moines did so that the start is after Labor Day, but that the end of the school year would still be what we already have on the calendar? I believe in their announcement last Friday, they indicated that they were moving in-service and planning days to this preschool start block to accommodate that.
Yeah, we had some of those conversations. We felt that when we were looking at student instructional days, that we also had a greater likelihood of being able to do those in person in June. And so trading those instructional days from August to June in this one calendar year seemed to be our best option at that point, instead of just flexing that professional development time for staff to the front of the year, as what I'm familiar with that Des Moines did. So I don't know all the details of what exactly their plan entailed, but for us, it was also trying to maximize some instructional face-to-face time with students that we felt was more likely in June.
Thank you.
Any additional questions from the public? Okay.
All right,
Then
well, declare that public hearing closed, and we can move into our return to learn plan updates. I know Matt has quite a few things to share with us, he and the team.
All right, guys, thank you. Good evening, board members and community. So we do have a presentation to walk you through here tonight. I might ask Kristen if she's okay sharing that presentation as we get started here. And then we might have other members of the team pick up the sharing rights as we get started. But Kristen, are you okay pulling that up to share?
Yep, let me get it up here just one second.
All right, so yes, I think that's good. And so just as a reminder, is, you know, you've seen us put these up several times before. I guess the core areas for us as far as our commitment is, we've tried to consider this process. Obviously, number one, health and safety, an academic focus about trying to maximize our academic opportunities and balancing those with the health and safety needs. Equity is that universal design as we've approached those planning efforts, and then trying to have flexibility and element of parent choice involved in these planning efforts as well. And then there's our continuum of models as we've shared the last several weeks as well. We'll spend some time talking about the hybrid component here tonight. We know there's been several questions from the community, and we've worked to try to develop some answers and refine those plans around those hybrid models, or the hybrid model that we would need to start in a 50% model. And so we'll talk through that here as well. I would just draw a special note to the bottom line of that graphic that we'll also spend a lot of time talking in detail tonight around the PK-12 online learning program. And so we know there could be some fluidity between the different models that we exist in for this school year because of the pandemic. And so this has been our consistent choice for families that would either be uncertain or unwilling to participate in a model that creates different transition points for kids as the ebb and flow of the pandemic and the health and safety conditions change in our community, that if families or parents are looking for that consistent choice, that K-12 or PK-12 online learning program is a choice for them. And we have that marked there at the bottom. And then probably the substantive update for this evening is that we did formally submit our request today. Today was the first day it was available on the Department of Ed's CASA site to begin the year in an offsite learning environment. We had to provide some questions around the positivity rate. You can tell our statement there in the slide, the 14-day rolling average, that was as of July 30th, was 6.26%. The updated information we got late today from the Johnson County Department of Public Health reflected that number. Sean showed there that it was above 7% as of August 2nd. So that was submitted, and then along with some other questions around how we would provide FAPE to students, meal service to students, the academic instruction method that would happen in an offsite environment, how 504 plans would be served, technology needs, how they would be met. And so that waiver request was submitted today. They've told us that it's not technically a waiver to refer to as permission, but people keep using the waiver language. And so I think it's easy for people to understand about what we're asking for in that sense. And so that request has been submitted along with our letter of support from the Johnson County Department of Public Health in that regard, with that data point. Also linked into the guidance there, or linked into the slide, is the guidance that Sean had referenced from his statement at the beginning that talks to when districts can ask for that permission in some of their metrics that the Iowa Department of Public Health, Department of Ed, and Governor released around which model and when you could ask for temporary permission to be in an offsite learning environment. And obviously the metrics don't match up to our ask right now, but we still are asking for that permission and feel like we have a strong case for the reason in asking for that permission. And so if people or the community or board for that matter would like to see that guidance specifically, we've linked those charts there and walk through the different scenarios that are outlined in the guidance we received last Thursday. The final thing that's linked there is that, excuse me, letter of support that we've mentioned a couple times from the Johnson County Department of Public Health, and not only the positivity rate in our county right now, but also the anticipation of, like we said, several young adults coming back to our community, and knowing that there's likely increased community spread in that regard. And again, from our conversations with them, I know a lot of people have, cited research around transmission rates from students to students, but we're also concerned about transmission from students to adults, or students bringing home the virus to their family members, and we've heard that as a consistent concern from our staff and families as well. And so again, that's the reason for submitting the request to begin in that offsite model. We'd anticipate having that information back in the next few days. They've tried to talk about a fairly quick turnaround. We don't have a guarantee on that, but we'd expect to get an answer from them since that's submitted. And once we have that answer, then we'll be able to consider our next steps as a district. And now is when we're going to go ahead and turn it over to our team members here. Amy's going to take the lead on the registration communication and the information around the PK-12 online learning program and some of our hybrid conversations. So I'll turn it over to Amy from here.
Good evening, everyone. Last week, we shared with you that parent communication would be going out on July 29th. And that communication signaled to our families that e-registration process was open, that new families and families needing assistance would have the ability to come on-site for on-site registration opportunities. We built our enrollment webpage out this year and updated it and detailed that we needed families to complete three main steps. One, either updating their Power School accounts through the e-registration process, or for new families, creating those accounts and then going through the update. Forms that were needed and necessary, again, for our returning families, there's quite a few less requirements there. And then the fees. We also detailed that families this year would have a choice to pick between two different options for their child. Option A included standard enrollment. And in that selection, the families are making the decision that their students are moving through any one of the return to learn models that we might be in during the school year, offsite, hybrid, or onsite. Or families could select for the first time option B, which is our PK-12 online learning program, which we detailed at length last week. This slide then goes on to detail the variety of methods that we use to communicate with our families about this very important process of e-registration and enrollment. I don't want to read all the bullet points to you, but you can see the variety of ways that we try to reach out, the variety of methods, and the ways that we translate. So beginning with that very critical and important message that's sent out via Blackboard Connect, we did have it translated into several languages that you can see there. It's sent via text message. It appears in our district mobile app, which has even more capability of translating to several different languages. Information is pushed out on our district website and the building websites, and that's because we know that we do not have everyone's address, particularly, of course, for our new family, email addresses, particularly for our new families. We repost several times to social media accounts, and we utilized our cultural liaisons this year, not only to help with that initial translation that I mentioned above, but to use additional communication through channels like WhatsApp and Remind. And then we ask our building principals to also follow up with a phone call. Oftentimes we see an uptick in e-registration or just attendance in general when our families hear from a familiar voice. The other pieces on the slide just to dictate also those two different elementary registration opportunities. and then when we have on-site opportunities for our secondary families. And with that, we'll move on to the next. So last week we brought to you and unveiled our Iccsd PK-12 online learning program. You will see linked in there the web address that explains the programming option that we walked through last week that we featured at the board meeting. We have a graphic in here that shows that so far, as of 2 o'clock this afternoon, we have 36%, and actually it just peaked again. We're roughly at about 38% of our parents having completed the e-registration process. And 60% so far have selected standard enrollment, while roughly 40% have selected the PK-12 piece. The next slide, which we don't need to necessarily, there you go. This details those percentages then by each of the levels, the breakdown with elementary, junior high, and high school. Parents, of course, are utilizing the Contact Us feature that we've embedded back in the website around any questions that they may have related to this new program. We've been looking for themes and recurring questions, and we've posted those back to the FAQ section in the website. We also have quite a few questions that may be more unique to families, and those we're working on getting individual responses back to. One question that has come up quite a bit is, what would those staffing ratios look like in this program? And as we talked through that this week, we're making the recommendation that we use the superintendent directions that are outlined with the levels set at what those RAM level 5 looks like. So for kindergarten, those class sizes would be approximately 24 students in the section. Grades 1 and 2, 28 students. Grades 3 and 6, 32. Junior high, a range of 26 to 32. And high school, a range of 28 to 34. I think we'll move on to the hybrid, and then maybe we can take questions on all three pieces if there are questions. So with our hybrid model, we thought it was important tonight to detail this and share some more information for our families. This meets the requirement that we saw the state put out, and I believe that was with the around the July 17th governor's press conference and subsequent follow-up with DE webinars, that in a hybrid model, that 50% of the time that face-to-face instruction would need to be offered over a 2-week period. We had initially brought to you a model where we had students in A groups in on Monday and Tuesday with a day for cleaning on Wednesday, and then Thursday and Friday would be our B group. That would no longer meet the state's definition in the way that we had it outlined. So we brought back this hybrid model, and what you see then there is that your rotating schedule between week 1 and 2 is really that Wednesday day that fluctuates for students. We have that outlined in the calendar section in board docs as well, if you're curious as to what A and B days could look like in that new calendar that we're proposing. Wednesday would also become our professional development day. And as a reminder, and I know we mentioned it last week, but we might have new members in the audience, this does not mean that our staff is on campus 50% of the time. In this model, staff are on site 100% of the time, with our students rotating on and off. And then we also were taking questions, even though they were coming in through the PK-12 online Qualtrics offering that we had with the Contact Us. Parents were wanting some more information on what would happen in those off-site days that would, in essence, help them then make the decision around if they should select the standard enrollment option or the PK-12 online option. For elementary and for secondary, we're going to use our LMS. So all of their assignments are going to be posted in either Seesaw or in Canvas. At the elementary, just like in the spring, we'll provide a suggested schedule for what off days would look like. And while the off days are largely asynchronous, we do intend to offer some live online opportunities. And in that schedule, the daily morning meeting that the teacher would be having with their class would also be an offering that the kids that are off-site could attend, could Zoom in and attend. And also we thought it was important that we have a certified staff member touching base, have at least a touch point around ELA and math for our elementary kids. In the secondary, all assignments are posted to Canvas, and the off-site days would be asynchronous. And with that, I take questions.
Hey, Amy, is the touch point with the certified staff member, that's not the in-person instructor, correct?
Lisa, we haven't clearly defined that yet. That's a great question. I think we need to work through the schedules a little bit more. We're not necessarily going to promise it's the classroom teacher. We're thinking about other certified classroom, non-classroom teachers as well. But we haven't completely ironed that out. So we want to at least acknowledge that it would be a certified staff member.
Hey, Amy, this is Janet. I had a question, and I see actually one of our attendees had a similar question around the cleaning of the facilities. One of the things that was really attractive about the previous hybrid model was Wednesdays was going to be used for sort of the sanitation and cleaning of the buildings and in a timely way, right? And in a way that our facilities team could effectively manage. Can you speak to how we're going to manage that from a facility standpoint?
Yeah, and I might lean on Chase for a little, for this as well. So that has definitely thrown a little bit of a wrench into things. And so we absolutely want to bring back as many of those mitigation techniques as we can. So we've been meeting to talk exactly about that, bringing our health and safety team together with our academic team, because all these decisions, of course, impact on what that delivery looks like. I would hesitate to share a ton out loud today. I would say that we're talking about things like cohorting, when we have to disinfect versus sanitize, what does lunch look like versus breakfast, playground usage, things like that. Chase, would you like to add anything?
Sure. I think, Janet, just to the specific question is, that's ideally why we brought the other model forward, is because it allowed for that day. And so we are losing that day of cleaning. I mean, there's no way around it. That doesn't mean that we're not still going to do it. And Dwayne and Jeff and the team are developing a plan so that we can do that daily cleaning each night. And then on the weekend, if we need to. We're also talking about ways that we can do some of that disinfecting during the school day. We mentioned in an earlier presentation that that might require some of our teachers actually partaking of their staff of cleaning hard surfaces in their rooms. Without having Wednesday as that off day, we are definitely going to have to look at that in terms of being able to wipe down surfaces if students transition between certain rooms. And so we do have a plan to make sure that we clean the buildings every day. But it's not what we had hoped for by initially proposing not to have anybody in the buildings on that Wednesday.
So, Amy, this is Charlie. Can you talk about what options parents would have to have all the kids in their family in either in the A group or the B group, as well as whether or not students can switch from one group to the other during the course of some period of time?
Yeah, so I think we've shared all along, Charlie, that is absolutely our intention, that we want families to be able to be lined up in either the A or B model. We have a little bit of a work ahead of us to figure that out, but we definitely want to make that commitment to our families. The ability then to select whether a family would want to be part of A or B, I don't see us having that sort of flexibility.
Okay, thanks.
So Amy, a quick question. With this, all of our teachers that have current contracts will be able to find an assignment, because if some schools have lower enrollment or some of our programs have lower enrollment, that just means that their assignment may look different, correct?
Absolutely, and Chase is going to cover that as we go through the responses in the staff survey.
Great, thank you.
That's absolutely the case, Ruthina. Thank you for the question.
I'd like to ask, and maybe this is kind of a bigger level question to think about that doesn't have an answer tonight, but given the statement that Sean read at the beginning of the meeting from the board, do you all believe that we have significant safety increases by going back to the model where there was no school on Wednesday? And so we're doing a 40% in person. And is it worth considering going back and considering that depending on how things progress? Or do we feel comfortable that we'll be able to make our schools safe with this hybrid model?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a big question, Lisa, with several parts to it. I mean, one of the considerations is, you know, around the cleaning end that Chase outlined there. You know, a frustration of ours, I think, just to be frank, is, you know, obviously that's going to take more resources on our part to do that instead of having, you know, time during a day to do that and create that. So that's night and weekend work for our facilities team to be able to do the cleaning, but we'll still do it. But that's going to be a resource consideration for us. Some of the other things that I think Amy started to touch on there that we're still trying to explore about how to do and working with our different groups and committees are some of how we handle then student transitions during the day, student opportunities for lunch and recess and some of those components, knowing that we don't have some staff time that we could give back on that Wednesday. We had looked at doing some potential professional development that day, along with if we had to eat in into some of the staff's time on those other days. And so there will be some limits on some of the things we're able to do with having students in there 5 days, but that wouldn't get us to that 50% model. And so really that, you know, the way that we submitted the request to the Department of Ed was really for anything less than 50% in that regard. And so that conversation is kind of tied to our original request about starting off site, since it's less than 50%. So it does create some increased challenges for sure. I think in specifics to the cleaning efforts, we'll still accomplish those. And then we're trying to look for other ways to also work with our groups to do some of the additional things that would increase health and safety mitigation efforts in that regard.
So Matt, is there a chance now to switch between this A/B group model and the previous one? Or is it too close to the start of school to make that kind of a change now?
Well, I don't think it's necessarily too close, Charlie. I think that's what I'm just saying, though. It's just connected to our other conversation. So if we're going to be out of compliance with a 100% offsite start, we'll be out of compliance with a 40% offsite start as well. And so I think that's the conversation that we haven't fully gotten an answer to from the Department of Ed yet about our ability to start at that less than 50% threshold. So for us to get to that 50% threshold, we felt like this was the best opportunity for us to do that.
It seems like we can move on.
Chase was next.
Okay. So good evening. We're going to go into the staff retention survey data a little bit. I foreshadowed this last week and said we would bring back some more in-depth information, and that's what we'd like to share this evening. The overall themes are still the same that I shared last week, but now we can look a little bit in the data, and we dissected it just a bit. But you see on this first slide that we had 85% of our staff respond to the survey, and we appreciate them taking time to do that, so we knew kind of where their minds were and their comfort level as we consider going back to school. And you can see the breakdown there among our employee groups. As we mentioned last week, the percentage of folks that are comfortable returning in our completely offsite model is very high, over 90%, 93%, with just between 6 and 7% still telling us that they're a little bit uncomfortable with that return. When we look at the hybrid model, it's a different story, and we see that number of folks that are comfortable with returning to their current positions drops dramatically to just above 60%. And so almost 40% of our staff say that they're uncomfortable currently with returning in our hybrid model. And we went ahead and we broke that information down a little bit further. So you can look at it, and we broke it into 3 groups: teachers, paraeducators, and then our administrators and support staff. A couple of different reasons we did this. Our teachers and paras represent our 2 largest employee groups. They're also the individuals that will be in our classrooms with our students when we return in the fall. And as we look at staffing, those are the 2 groups that that we have to focus on a lot when it comes to teaching and learning with our students. But it's pretty consistent as we look across those 3 breakdowns of groups about that comfort level. And so there is a little bit of variation when we look between our admin and support staff and then our paras and our teachers. But for the most part, it's tracking those overall numbers. We didn't only look at it across employee groups, we also looked at it between levels. And you might ask why? Well, staffing purposes. When we look to staff buildings, we can't simply look at it as K-12. We have to look at certifications, licensure, classes at the different levels. And so this helps us as we begin to put that staffing puzzle together, but it's consistent. And so we see that same level of comfort ranging in our buildings K-12. One question we did ask was, what were the challenges that our employees felt when they looked at this? And so if an employee answered that they were uncomfortable returning in our hybrid model, we asked them to tell us what was the most pressing concern. Now, obviously, people have multiple concerns, and those can vary, but we asked them to really tell us their most pressing. And so you can see from this chart, the raw numbers on the left in terms of responses, and then also how it breaks down in percentages. The largest group being general COVID concerns as a community, as a school district, just those concerns we have that about COVID and the risks that we take when we go back to school, going all the way down to our smallest being that just over 5% of individuals that have those childcare challenges in their household. And so again, this isn't the only challenge maybe somebody had, but we did ask them for their most pressing to see if there were ways or supports that we could put in place that we need to be thinking through as we looked at how best to help our staff as we return to teaching and learning. The last question on the survey was if you wanted to speak with HR. And this necessarily wasn't requesting an accommodation or a leave of absence, but just if you wanted more information. And we see that over 13% of our staff would like to speak with HR. I think that's good. HR should be a resource to answer questions, to provide support for our staff, especially in times like this. And so I'm happy that so many people have decided they'd like to reach out and hear more information. Nick and Jeremy have been putting on some information sessions for staff to come and listen and to gain more of that broad information, and then setting up follow-up one-on-one conversations with individuals that would like more information. We also broke this information down by some of those other categories. And so you can see there, paras and teachers trending in the teens, and then our admin and support staff just a tick under that at under 10%. And then if we look at it also by the grade levels, you see that it's pretty consistent. And so again, it just helps us get a better picture of where our employees are, not generally, but also being able to drill down on that as we try to work to support staff and also put the staffing picture together as we move into this school year. And so we really do appreciate everyone taking the time to fill out the survey. And as I mentioned last week, words are important, and we intentionally ask them about their comfort level because we need to know how our staff feels. We don't just want to say, are you willing to do this? We want to know how they're feeling about their working conditions right now. And so we are intentional in the way we ask those questions. And thanks, Kristen, for going forward. I forgot about this piece. We broke down those requests to HR a little bit further so we can see they're trending between individuals that might be seeking an actual leave of absence from their position for the year, or those that want to continue in their position but are looking for an accommodation. And it's about 2 to 1 looking for that accommodation versus the leave of absence. Same trends that we see across the way we broke down the employee groups. And a little bit of variation when we look at our different levels. And again, we need to drill into that a little bit further, but it helps us as we start to look at maybe where some of our needs are as we put the staffing puzzle together over the next few weeks. We'll pause there before we go to the next section, and I'll answer any questions that board members might have about this survey data or just staffing in general. Ruthie, and I know you asked one as people are thinking. Ruthie, I know you asked one to Amy earlier, and I can't remember exactly what it was, but along the lines, if we have current teachers, will they have a teaching position for this upcoming year? Yes, absolutely. If individuals are in a teaching role with us and they want to teach for us next year, while it might not be in the exact classroom, grade level, or subject that they were currently in last year, we will have a spot for them. We are going to work closely with Brady. Brady's been great in the association as we started to put this together. But we're also going to abide by our negotiated agreement. It provides a good blueprint for us when we have to make changes in staffing and administratively move individuals around. And so we're going to follow that language. We did have some discussion, especially as we look to staff the online PK-12 program. Are we going to advertise those positions? Given the timing, given where we are in the summer and all the movement that still needs to take place, we are going to use our ability to place people. Now, that doesn't mean that we aren't being receptive to folks that are reaching out. Of course, the work that Nick and Jeremy are doing with individuals who are reaching out information about workplace accommodations and such are also in the mix. But I think it is important to note that we are not going to post and have people apply for these roles. We just don't have the time for it, to be quite honest with you. That process would take too long. And so we are entertaining individuals that reach out to us with those requests, looking at the processes we have in terms of accommodation, and then also going to lean on the processes we have outlined in our negotiated agreement for the transfer of individuals from one teaching position to another.
Chase, since you mentioned Brady, I'm going to let other board members ask questions, but I know Brady had some thoughts he wanted to share. And you kind of gave me a nice segue there. So I'd invite Brady to jump in here with some thoughts from the teacher side.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, President Eystone. On behalf of ICEA, I'd like to just thank you all for continuing to prioritize the health and safety of our students, staff, and community. President Eystone, your opening statement on behalf of the board and Superintendent Degner and his team is a powerful reminder of your commitment to doing what is best for our community. You know, one of the most important aspects of the ICEA leadership team dialogue about our return to learn process this spring and summer has centered around our values. What do we believe? You know, what do we stand for? Essentially, who are we? And today, at our leadership meeting, we came back to our values to ensure that our statement tonight, and I appreciate the opportunity to deliver it, is reflective of who we are and what we stand for. And to be clear, ICEA, the Iowa City Education Association, values health and scientific expertise, educator voice, access to protection, leading with equity, and an empathetic approach to rebuilding our learning community. So we want to thank the board of directors and the admin teams for your shared commitment to educator voice. I understand that we might be the only board that allows the president of the association to be a panelist, and I deeply appreciate that opportunity. Our partnership is strong and it's built on trust and respect and our shared focus on doing what is best for our students. We are united. The Iowa City Education Association is united with the Iowa City Community Schools in opposing the July 30th guidance from the Reynolds administration and the Iowa Department of Education. In our view, the DE's community transmission metrics are dangerous outliers that deny the ability of local authorities to make common sense decisions that best protect the health and safety of their community. We've talked repeatedly throughout the COVID pandemic as a group about the critical need of our district to be agile, to respond quickly and intelligently to changing data, as well as research from our amazing medical professionals and scientific community. The metrics proposed on July 30th fatally hamstring that agility by effectively denying a local school board and local school district the ability to make necessary decisions during a pandemic to protect the health and safety of their students, staff, and community. On July 14th, after thousands of hours of work by district administrative teams and community partners, and hundreds of hours of work and careful consideration by all of you, you took the correct and courageous step to protect the health and safety of our community by unanimously voting on both a continuum of learning models that best positioned us to safely return our students to our brick and mortar schools, and a starting point on that continuum, our remote continuous learning model. We remain confident in our process, our plan, and your vote. And we trust our administrative leaders and community partners in their discussions with the Department of Education during their consideration process of our request. In the event that our request for permission is denied, ICEA leadership strongly encourages the Iccsd Board of Directors to continue to partner with ICEA, district administrative teams, and local health officials to quickly and thoroughly examine conditions in our community, and to be willing to start in our fully remote continuous learning model, a model and decision that we came to lawfully, if local conditions, community metrics, and our local authorities determine it is the best course of action. ICEA remains confident that the plan adopted on July 14th is the best plan to safely return students and staff to our campuses. My leadership team meeting this morning ended with a powerful reminder of our values. One of our leaders asked, if we don't stand up for what is right or for what we believe, who are we? And tonight, once again, we're reminded that those values are not just the values of the Iowa City Education Association. They are values shared by all of you, and they are seen in your words and your actions. So on behalf of the thousands of proud Iowa City School District employees, thank you.
Thanks, Brady. Were there any questions from board members on the staff survey stuff before we move into the calendar questions? All right, let's move on.
All right, thanks, Sean. So we did go out and try to collect some feedback around the calendar change that's presented to you as the next agenda item for action tonight. And so we did a quick survey around the start date survey, and the administration information is there below. The information link was sent to families, including incoming kindergarten families, and translated accordingly. We also had the information link distributed to the district's mobile app with also those language options for each user. And the information and link was posted on the district website and each school website. And we also disseminated it through the district social media accounts. You can see the languages it was translated to there and who the survey audience was. It was a short survey window, but we did receive a significant amount of feedback. So we'll move through and share that with you here this evening. So parents, we had close to 7,500 responses, and employees close to 1,600 responses, as you can see there. And then our overall start date preference feedback when considering the groups together, about exactly 29.32% preferred the 8/24 start date. The September 8th start date had 38.93%, and then 31.74% deferred to the district to make the best decision. When we break that down then further by staff and parents, the gap was a little bit closer there for parents with 32% preferring the traditional start date of August 24th, 37% roughly preferred the September 8th, and about 30% still deferred to the district. And then on the staff side, you can see the margin was quite a bit different there, that 48, close to 49% of our staff preferred the September 8th start date, with only about 15 to 16% wanting to start still on the August 24th date, and 36% deferring to the district in that regard. And did we have one more slide there, Kristen, or is that it?
That's it, Matt.
That was it. So I think we could take any questions, obviously, around the calendar, but that would be the feedback data that we were able to get in a quick snapshot, and kind of was able to offer some of those reasons to you to reinforce those reasons there at the beginning of the meeting when we did the hearing. So, but would be happy to answer any questions you might have or if you want to move into that next agenda item formally and then ask those questions, whatever you prefer there, President Einstone.
I say we go ahead and do questions now, because we can go back and ask any other questions, not just on calendar stuff, if we need to, and get all the Q&A out of the way here.
Sean, I just have I think one question about considering the calendar. Do I understand right that we're being asked just to consider a calendar change reflecting a different start date and end date? We're not being asked to consider what's going to happen on the start date. We're going to start, excuse me, we're going to start with entirely online or some hybrid model. Am I right in saying that's what we're
Yes.
we're being asked to decide?
Right, Charlie, you're only being asked to vote on the official start date of school being changed to September 8th from August 24th. And that's not a decision on the model this evening about how that start is on September 8th. And so it's simply pushing that start date back.
Okay, thank you.
Hey, I have a question about the model in general. My understanding from the governor's press conference today and last week is that her threat to not count the time does not apply to the online learning program offered by the district. That is the opt-in program that parents can choose. And so regardless of the news that has come out today, are parents who opt into online guaranteed that that time will count and can know that credit will be given and that instruction will be secure in that model?
Yes, we're confident in that, Lisa, that if you're in that PK-12 online learning program and the parents have selected into that, that is an acceptable route to count those hours, and that they'll be fine and there will be no issues with that. It's more on the what we use for the on-site delivery or off-site delivery as we're changing through those models.
Matt, can you speak to the question of if we take our vote here and we do delay the start, will we also delay the date? People need to kind of make their decision on their e-registration as to what their plans are.
Yeah, so if we're able to have that start date pushed back, then we'll also extend that date for when those selections would need to be made in e-registration to give families some more time through that. So Amy, help me remember what that specific date we landed on today was. I think it was we would give it another week. So we'd go from the 9th to the 16th.
That's correct.
Matt, this is Janet, and maybe this is also a question for Brady too, but just curious. I think one of the things I think it potentially is the benefit of a later start is that it gives our teachers who are going to be serving students in the pre-K-12 online program an opportunity just to further their work in terms of the online courses and delivery models and that kind of thing. Is that a true statement, or am I overstating that?
No, I think anytime that we have additional here is going to be a benefit to us. I mean, I think that was part of the challenge with trying to position ourselves well for August 24th and then having some late guidance come in. And so as we continue to build out that online program, or as teachers continue to prepare for the year, that additional time is going to be much needed in that regard. And so that will be a benefit to us. And then I do, strongly believe those instructional days in June can be a positive for us this year. Traditionally, as we try not to go into much of June, but this is obviously a unique scenario. And so if we're able to capture some in-person learning days with a greater likelihood in June, then we also feel strong about that.
Yeah, this is Brady. I would just second everything Matt would say. I think teachers are going to be, I know they'll be incredibly appreciative of that extra 2 weeks to do onboarding and some training. So that's an accurate statement, Janet.
Thanks.
That 2-week delay is for either model, our continuous learning or the online program. I think there might be some questions.
Yeah, both programs would start at the same time. You're right, Sean.
Sorry, Charlie.
Oh, thanks, Sean. So then, trying to think about how people in the community could view what we're going to do tonight, what we may do tonight, except for we're not actually tonight going to take a vote that reaffirms or does not reaffirm our commitment to starting the school year with an online model. But that would be our intention to do that or not do that would come in part from reading Sean's opening statement. Am I being fair here in trying to characterize what the community might view us as trying to do this evening?
Sure. Well, maybe I can help clear that up a little bit, Charlie. I think the opening statement there, the takeaway that I think the district is trying to reinforce is that those metrics shared to us last week do not seem acceptable for us to wait to be able to move the district to an offsite learning environment or to move a building to an offsite learning environment with the percentages as high as 15 to 20% to be granted that permission. And so I think that those comments are, and I don't want to speak for everybody or for Sean, but to me, when I hear those, that's really around the metrics. I think the district still has to have the conversation, what we do following the decision on the waiver. The Department of Ed and the Department of Health and the governor's asked us to follow a process. And so we're still following that process. We submitted the application today, provided the necessary information, the health and safety data that they asked for, as well as how we would deliver in an offsite learning environment. So obviously, if that's denied, then we need to come back with an additional conversation about how that means we start. Does that mean, you've seen other districts take some action not in line with the governor, or do we look at our 50% plan that we've also detailed out here tonight? So I think those are two separate conversations. Tonight, the only vote is about the calendar. So you're not affirming a commitment or not, or disagreeing with the commitment on what to do. I guess I don't think that came out very well, but really your action tonight, the only action the board has taken here tonight would be to change the start date. We need to get an answer back on the status of our application from the Department of Ed, I think, to have that additional conversation.
Okay, thanks for that clarification. So.
Any other questions from the board? All right, we can move on to our action item, which is, as we just discussed, taking action on the proposed calendar change. Is there any further discussion on that very specific thing? Otherwise, I would entertain a motion.
Sean, move to approve the calendar change for the 2020-2021 school year.
Second.
Any further discussion? All right, Kim, we are ready to vote.
Online voting is open.
Kim, I'm having problems with internet. I'm going to vote aye.
Thank you. All votes have been cast and the motion carries with all directors voting in favor.
All right, thank you, Kim. I want to just reiterate now that we have made that decision. Remind me, you said we're adding another week on for registration deadline to August 16th from the 9th for people to make their decision. So I'll make sure that that's out there. I really do want to thank the team for all the work for this meeting, as well as the kind of the collaborative effort on the calendar and everything else that we're doing. Brady, thanks to you and your leadership team. Board members, thank you for all the time and effort you guys are putting in. But that is our agenda tonight. So We will come back again in a week to have more discussion on this topic as well as others. So I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
All right, all in favor, everyone?
Aye.
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 All right, we'll see you all next week.
Thanks, everybody. Take
Thank you.
care.